In this demo, we're going to talk about 2D animation principles. We're going to start with the bouncing ball exercise. Now here you can see that I'm in Photoshop. My first layer is white. I've got 2 additional layers in there that are transparent. The first layer has a path that I've designated for my bouncing ball, and the second has the size, shape of my ball, which I believe is about 30 pixels. Yes, 30 pixels. So as my ball is coming through the air, dropping down on this particular surface, give myself a surface here, then it bounces and will continue to bounce out of the scene. Now the bouncing ball exercise is to illustrate a number of different animation principles: timing, balance, overlapping, weight, recoil, squash and stretch, terms that you'll hear often associated with animation. Let's go ahead through this exercise and we'll talk about some of those. This weight of the ball will bring that ball back to earth, and as it is at its high point in the bounce, it's actually at its slowest. As it comes up, it begins to slow down, and as it comes down again, it gains speed and hits the surface, and then again shoots up out of there, slows down, back, and continues. So we're going to illustrate that by taking this ball through its paces. So I have my ball on my layer 2, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that layer. I'm going to grab my move tool, and I'm going to bring that ball right down here to earth. Now when it hits, the rubber ball hits this surface, it's going to change volume. It actually won't change volume, it's going to change shape. So I'm going to get my select tool, I'm going to right click on there, and I'm going to free transform. So when it hits that surface, it's actually going to squish. However, when it squishes, the volume still needs to remain the same, so we're going to stretch that as well, so that this container, this ball, actually still contains the same amount of mass, it's just changed shape. Alright, so if I deselect that now, by hitting my enter key, I can see that the basic volume has remained the same even though the shape has changed. Alright, so we have one keyframe which is at the height of the bounce. We have another keyframe which is at the lowest point of the bounce. Now we're going to create what's called an in-between. So I'm going back to the layer with my ball in its correct shape, and I'm going to duplicate that again, and I'm going to move it right down here to the center between the 2 other keyframes. Alright, now as the movement of the ball comes from the high point to the low point, it actually begins to pick up speed. So what we're going to do is also change the shape of the ball in this particular keyframe to show speed. The way that we do that is the same way. We're going to get our free transform, and we're going to just pull that slightly in the direction of the speed, and then we're going to rotate that along that path. Alright, so if I go ahead and deselect that, you can see that it's generally the same volume, but you can see that it's picking up speed, and so you're getting some volume change, and then it hits here, bounces off. Alright, so now what we're going to do is create a keyframe over here. We're going back to the original, shape and size of the ball. We're going to duplicate this layer again. Now in traditional animation, you have to draw all of these, but with digital, you can duplicate them. Alright, so I've put my ball on the next keyframe, which is the high point of this particular arc, and it will regain its shape just as it did here. I'm going to move this one back a little bit too, so that we have this shape restored once it gets to this high point. Now you notice that this high point is actually lower than this high point. As the ball bounces, it actually loses steam, it actually loses height. So now we're going to create an in-between between this keyframe and this keyframe. So let's go ahead and grab that one, duplicate it, and bring it back. And again, it's moving faster from here to here than it is from here to here. So I'm going to put it next to, do it there. It'll be alright. We'll see it when we get it timed out. Alright, so I'm going to come up here to my selection, right click on there, retransform, and again I'm going to change the shape of that slightly to show that it's in motion, it's going fast. Hit enter. Alright, so I have the beginnings of my animation here. I'm going to create a couple more in-betweens before we go to the next stage. So we have the layer 2, which is our first ball. We have our in-between after that. I'm going to reorder these a little bit now so I'll keep track of them a little bit better. And then we have full down, in between. Alright, so you can kind of see those in my previewer here. Alright, so the next in between that I want to give myself is between this ball and this ball. So I'm going to go back to layer 2 and duplicate that layer, pull it out to in between this one and this one, and I'm going to ever so slightly change the shape of it to be in between those two shapes. So just a little bit this way, a little bit this way. Hard to do it this size, and line it up. Alright. Okay, again I'm going to do my in-between between this one and the one on the ground. And in this case, I'm not going to go in between this shape and this shape because this is full impact on this surface. And so it's not going to impact the surface until it actually gets to that point. So in this case, I'm going to keep it more in fitting with this particular shape than that one. I am going to rotate that into position. Alright. Exactly. Alright, so again, in between this ball and this ball. And I'm going to take the shape of this one and duplicate it. Put that where it belongs in the stack. Move it into position. Right. Now this has just bounced, and so it's going to be really reactive here, so I'm going to give it a little more distance away from this one than this one. In fact, I'm going to go back and adjust this one as well, make it a bit closer. Alright, so one more to do. This one looks a little off. Use my arrow keys to get it into position. Alright, I'm going to grab this one, duplicate it, move it into position here, rotate it, and make it a little round. Alright, so we have our keyframes 1, 2, and 3. We have our in-betweens, secondary in-betweens, and now let's take our keyframes and our in-betweens and create an animation out of them. In order to do that, come up here to Window, Animation, and you can see that we get a little window down here, the new menu. Right over here, this icon, it's convert to timeline animation. Come in here and convert that. And then you can see that we have what looks like our layers in this animation timeline editor. So the next thing we want to do is determine how long this animation is. And since we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, we're only going to do about 10 keyframes. So this, by default, time slider is set to 0, 0 when you come into this editor. Right over here, this tiny little icon, you're going to click that, and you're going to say Set Start a Work Area. Okay? Then you're going to come over here to frame, let's say 10, you can see that right here, and you're going to come back over here and say Set End of Work Area. Alright, and now down here you have a slider, and you can slide that over so that you have the entire 10 keyframes clearly visible. The next thing you're going to do is back up to this icon, and you're going to say Trim Document Duration to Work Area. And as you can see, it trimmed off all of the additional timelines on these layers. Okay, so now what we're going to do is come down here and layer 3, let's see, not sure what that one is, might be an additional, oh, alright, that's our path. We don't want that in there. So we'll delete that here in a little bit, but for layer 2, that is the first ball. If I turn it off, all on and off, you can see that's our very first ball. And let's see if we can pull this down and reduce the size so we can see it. Okay. So if we grab a hold of this timeline, you can see that my cursor changes at the end of it. You just want to click and drag this over so that the duration of this particular ball, the visibility of this ball, is only within frame 0 to 1. Okay. Now we're going to move up to the next one, and this particular ball we only want visible from frame 1 to frame 2. You can see that it disappeared, and it does have a snapping feature to help you snap those into position. So frame 3, we want that visible from frame 2 to 3, and so on. So I'll pause here, and as soon as I get all of these into position, I will come back.